What happens when Hollywood's most unpredictable actor sits across from late-night television's most passive-aggressive host? You're about to see one of the most awkward interviews in talk show history. A simple movie promotion that spiraled into chaos, leaving the audience stunned and one A-list celebrity storming off the set. Be sure to subscribe and drop a comment below because this story is truly unbelievable. Mark Wahlberg walked onto the Jimmy Kimmel live stage that night with his usual confident energy, waving to the crowd before settling into the guest chair. The audience roared with excitement, cheering for the Boston native who had just finished filming his newest action movie. Jimmy Kimmel, sitting behind his desk with that trademark smirk, looked ready for what should have been a routine promotional chat. "Mark Wahlberg, everybody," Jimmy announced as the applause faded. "Thanks for being here, Mark. I know you're busy saving the world in movies, and probably in real life too, knowing you." Mark chuckled, shifting slightly in his seat. "Thanks for having me, Jimmy. Always good to be back in Hollywood, even if it's not my favorite place in the world." "Oh, right, because you're all about that Boston life now," Jimmy said, his tone carrying just a hint of sarcasm. "Tell me, do you ever miss the old days when you could walk around Boston and nobody recognized you? Back when you were just, what was it again? Marky Mark?" The audience laughed, but Mark's expression changed slightly. His smile stayed, but his eyes narrowed just a little. "Those were different times, Jimmy. I was young. Made mistakes, learned from them. That's what growing up's about." Sure, Jimmy nodded, leaning back in his chair with that casual pose that usually meant he was gearing up for something pointed. "But you know what's really interesting? You've reinvented yourself completely, from underwear modeling to music, and now you're this respected actor and producer. That's quite the transformation. People change, Jimmy, people grow. I've been lucky to get the chance to work hard and improve in this business." Jimmy's grin widened, but his eyes didn't match the smile. "Evolve, that's one way to put it. Some people might say you've just gotten really good at managing your image. You know, controlling the story." Mark leaned forward a little, his Boston accent becoming stronger. "What exactly are you trying to say here, Jimmy?" "Oh, nothing," Jimmy said with a wave of his hand, still smirking. "I just think it's fascinating how Hollywood works, how someone can completely reinvent themselves, and everyone just sort of goes along with it like collective amnesia or something." The audience started to feel the tension. The usual playful back and forth between host and guest was turning uncomfortable. Mark's jaw tightened as he leaned back, watching Jimmy carefully. "You know what, Jimmy? If you've got something to say, just say it. Don't play these passive-aggressive games." Jimmy raised his eyebrows in mock surprise. "Passive-aggressive? Me? Come on, Mark, I'm just talking. That's what we do here. We talk." "Yeah, well, there's talking," Mark said evenly, "and then there's whatever this is. You invited me here to talk about my new movie. So let's talk about the movie." Of course," Jimmy said quickly, picking up a cue card and glancing at it before setting it down again. "But you know, what's really fascinating is your whole journey. From the streets of Boston to Hollywood fame. That's quite a climb, isn't it? What the hell is wrong with you tonight?" Mark asked, now visibly irritated. "You acting like we've got some kind of problem." Jimmy raised his hands in mock innocence. "No problem, Mark. I'm just curious about the real Mark Wahlberg, the guy beneath all the Hollywood polish. The one who knows how to handle himself when things get tough." "Handle myself?" Mark's voice dropped lower, his tone calm but dangerous. "What do you think you know about how I handle myself?" "Well," Jimmy said, forcing a chuckle, "you've got a bit of a reputation, don't you? For being, let's say, direct when it comes to solving problems." The tension in the studio was now thick enough to touch. Mark stood up slowly, and for the first time Jimmy's composure seemed to crack. "You know what, Jimmy? I came here as a professional to talk about my work, to promote a film that a lot of people worked hard on. But if you want to sit there taking shots at me for reasons I don't understand, then we've got an issue." "Mark, sit down," Jimmy said quickly, trying to sound calm. Let's reset here. Maybe there's a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" Mark laughed coldly. "Jimmy, I've been doing interviews for 25 years. I know the difference between a misunderstanding and someone trying to push my buttons for entertainment." The audience was silent now, watching something that no longer felt like TV. It felt real. Jimmy tried to recover, Okay. Let's talk about the movie then. Your new film. What's it called again? Don't, Mark said quietly, but with such force that everyone in the room froze. Don't pretend you don't know what you're doing here. Jimmy shifted uncomfortably, the confidence draining from his face. The bright studio lights seemed harsher now, revealing the sweat on his forehead. But instead of backing off, Jimmy made a mistake that turned a tense interview into TV infamy. Look, Mark, Jimmy said with a forced laugh. I think you're being a little sensitive here. I mean, come on. We're adults, right? Can't we have a real conversation without you getting all street about it? The words hung in the air like a knife. Mark's face went still. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the cameras. Even the crew stopped moving. Street? Mark repeated slowly, his accent thick. Did you just say I was getting street about it? Jimmy realized he had gone too far, but pride, and the pressure of live TV, made him double down instead of apologizing. I just meant you're getting kind of intense over what's supposed to be a fun interview. Fun? Mark took a step closer to Jimmy's desk. The host leaned back instinctively. You think this is fun? Sitting here while you take cheap shots at me and my past? That's your idea of fun? Mark, please, Jimmy said, his voice cracking slightly. Let's just move on to the movie. No, Mark said firmly. You don't get to do that. You don't get to throw digs and then act like nothing happened when you realize you went too far. The crowd was frozen. This wasn't a funny moment anymore. This was real anger. Mark, I understand you're upset, Jimmy said nervously. But we're on live TV. Maybe we should take a commercial break. Oh, now you care that we're on television? Mark interrupted. You weren't worried about that when you were trying to humiliate me in front of your audience. I wasn't trying to humiliate you, Jimmy snapped, his voice rising. Really? Then what do you call it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you brought me here to be the punchline. Like I'm supposed to sit here and smile while you take shots at me. Jimmy's face reddened, his own temper flaring. Look, Mark, I've had hundreds of guests on this show, and none of them ever reacted like this to a few simple questions. Simple questions? Mark laughed bitterly. You've been mocking me since I sat down. You questioned my authenticity, mocked my past, and then called me street when I stood up for myself. I was just doing my job, Jimmy shouted. This is a comedy show, Mark. Not everything's some personal attack. Your job, Mark said, his voice now low and cutting, is to make guests feel welcome, not to use them as targets to make yourself feel better. Jimmy finally stood, slamming his hands on the desk. You come on my show, sit in my chair, and then tell me how to do my job? That's disrespectful, Mark stared at him, breathing slowly. Then, in a quiet, final tone, he said, You're right, Jimmy. This is your show, your chairs, your stage. He turned and began walking off. Where are you going? Jimmy asked, panic creeping in. I'm leaving, Mark said without looking back. Because unlike some people, I know when I'm not welcome. Jimmy, desperate, made one last terrible mistake. Oh, that's perfect, Mark. Just walk away. That's what everyone expects from you, right? When things get tough, you bail. Mark stopped dead. Slowly he turned back, his stare freezing the room. What did you just say? Jimmy tried to recover. I didn't mean anything by it, No, Mark interrupted, stepping closer. You said that's what everyone expects from me. What exactly do you mean by that? The sound of Mark's shoes echoed in the silence. Jimmy gripped the edge of his desk, pale. Mark, please. Let's just calm down, he said weakly. Calm down? Mark repeated. You want to talk about professionalism? A professional doesn't ambush their guest on live TV. Personal scores? Jimmy snapped. I don't even know you well enough to have personal scores with you. Then what is this? Mark shot back. Because it sure as hell isn't about a movie. Jimmy's voice dropped low, almost trembling. You really want to know what this is about? Yeah, Mark said evenly. I do. Jimmy stood up, his voice bitter. It's because guys like you make me sick. You come from nowhere, screw up half your life, and Hollywood still gives you everything. Meanwhile, people like me work for decades, and we're lucky to keep our jobs. Mark blinked, almost laughing in disbelief. So this is about jealousy? It's not jealousy, Jimmy snarled.